Start us off, please.
Yeah, hey Matt, how are you?
Good.
Uh, Playing Michigan State again, obviously it was really difficult to score on them in the first half, and then obviously the second half went your way. But just what problems did they cause defensively in that first half more than anything that you can be your starting point this time around?
Well, they do a good job, obviously, of pressuring the ball and making it difficult for you to catch, obviously making it difficult for you to see the action by putting pressure on the basketball. They're very physical, dealing with cuts and dealing in post defense. So just being able to cut through that type of pressure and being able to get deep post ups, versus physical play, I think that was the hardest thing, for us to start. And then when we did get shots, shooting those shots in rhythm, I think is important because you have to work so hard sometimes just to get a clean look. When you do get it, you rush it a little bit. But just, being aggressive when you have advantages, when you have numbers or you have angles, but being patient when you don't. But you have to be strong with the ball. You have to not forget about the guy who's guarding you, who's pressuring you, but also you got to see the defense and be able to pass the ball away from the defense. It just took us about a half to get involved and really adjust to, how they were defending us. And then obviously we did have some looks that didn't go down, so it makes it look a little worse than it is. But you do have to give credit to Michigan State. I thought their defense was great in the first half. Then in the second half, we established Travion in the low post and was able to play through him. We still got some good looks in the game from the perimeter that didn't go down. But it was just, one of those games where we just had to grind it out and find a way to win, and we were fortunate enough to do so.
How were you able to get Travion going in that second half? Was there anything specific you did to get him going, or did he just kind of turn it up?
No, just, we're trying to get him the ball in the first place. He didn't have a good first half and got a little bit of foul trouble, if I recall. And just trying to get him the ball and kind of his sweet spots and, where he's more effective. And, our guys did a good job of executing, did a good job of delivering the ball. And then obviously he made some plays.
Yeah. I don't know if this is necessarily a typical Michigan State team, but obviously you always have to worry about keeping them at a transition. And if I recall correctly, you did a pretty good job doing that. Was that more good offense? Was that more good defense? How did you process that?
Well, you're gonna, when you're not scoring the basketball, obviously there's going to be a lot of rebounds. So then it's going to be harder to set your defense, even though it's not possible. Now you don't want them, advancing the basketball. They do a great job with Langford and Aaron Henry of kicking the ball ahead, and those guys attacking the rim and creating for other people, but also just knocking down those shots. Like, go kick it ahead, and Langford's great at a one dribble pull up, but you have to be there, building walls. You have to make it hard for them to pass the ball ahead offensively, because when they do, they're pretty they're pretty effective. But I think it really comes down to scoring the basketball in the second half. And so the more you can score the ball, the more you're going to be able to set your defense, even though they will push it on makes too.
All right. Looks like we're in for some nasty weather here. As far as everything's okay with them getting here?
Yeah, they're going to bust today is the word I got.
Oh, are they?
It was second through one of our staff members talking to one of their staff members. So they're supposed to bust here, I think, after their practice today.
Okay. Is there anything you've put your finger on in terms of getting that three-point shooting percentage up? You'd mentioned after the game the other day that you've got good shooters who just aren't knocking down shots. Any secret sauce to that right now?
No, just keep working on your shot. Keep, putting in your time, and our guys do that. And I'm confident, shots will go down for us. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's not frustrating when guys can't shoot. It's frustrating when guys can shoot and it doesn't go in. That's right. A frustrating piece. When guys shoot the basketball or take a bad shot, they're not going to go in. And so it's like looking at our turnovers. Like, you look at our turnovers in the game, you're like, okay, this isn't bad. We can manage this. But we have 5 to 8 shots in the game we absolutely shouldn't take. Those are turnovers too. They don't go in the box score, but those are turnovers. Like, we got to get from not taking tough shots. Like, if you take a tough shot, you should be in a 5 seconds or less on your shot clock. You just should at this point in the season. But we're still having those type of possessions, and we got to be able to curtail those, and that will really help us. Because, we talk about not executing, having an empty possession, taking a shot we shouldn't take. Normally that's an empty possession. And then just, the ones that we're taking that are good shots that aren't going in, that gets frustrating a little bit. But the law of averages as a shooter. You just keep taking them. You just keep shooting good shots, and the ball's going to go in for you. But you got to put your work in. Whether you're making shots or missing shots or somewhere in between, you just got to keep putting in your work, and things will work out for you.
Are you okay with the volume everyone's shooting at, Jaden and Aaron specifically?
Jaden and who?
Aaron.
Yeah, the volume comes out of a whole bunch of games. I'm not with some of the ones that you're taking. Like Jaden has to learn to not settle. Like if he gets at the end of shot clocks, I think it's a little bit different. But he'll settle for where he is right now. Like he's got to take his wide open threes and drive the basketball. He's done a good job of playing off of 2 feet. In conference play, he's got a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio. He's done a much better job there. But he still has 2 or 3 possessions that you want back at the end of the game because he's trying to find himself through his shooting. Just take your open ones. Until you really can get into a rhythm, just take your catch and shoot open ones and just leave it at that. But use your dribble and be able to attack. He's proven that he can get to the rim and score. He's also proven that he can, break the defense down and create for his teammates.
What about Aaron?
Just taking the ones that come his way. Aaron's taking good shots. Like Aaron's not, I can't remember the last time he forced a 3. He just needs to take the rhythm threes that he gets. I think his has been fine.
Eric's not shot as well as he shot in the past. Do you think that has to do with the injury early in the season? Do you think that broke his rhythm early or anything like that?
It could.
Specifically on threes. Obviously, he made all his pull-ups the other night. But
yeah, I don't know. Like, you're asking a lot of Ouija board type questions here. I don't know how I'm supposed to answer some of these questions. But no, I thought he got into a rhythm. He got to his pull-up and made a couple of his pull-ups. Anytime you're out for a period of time, you always feel like you're okay. Yeah. And it's just like, you just want to step right back into where you were when you left. And it doesn't work that way. You have to work your way to that. So yeah, some of that could have been the case, but I think more than anything, like, I'm a big believer in the averages of things. Like I'm just a big believer in just, working on your game, putting in time, and working on your strengths too. Like sometimes guys just want to work on their weaknesses, which obviously makes sense to do so, but just be good at what you're good at. And, I think Eric, had a really good game for us last game, scored in a variety of ways, and just, pick your spots. If those situations come up next game, be aggressive. If they don't, then, move the basketball and create other things through the action that we run.
And just one last thing I want to ask you about. Can you just kind of update us on Manny, where kind of he is right now?
He's not practicing. He still has, effects. And, from obviously when he tested positive from COVID, he's never really gotten back. He came back. You guys would probably know more than I would because you asked the question. He came back and practiced for a period of time.
Like 5 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, for about a week, about 6 to 8 weeks ago. And then since then, he hasn't practiced since. So,
as far as you know at this point, could this threaten his career?
I haven't heard it be put that way, no. But obviously it makes sense for him after, running more tests and talking to the doctors that, just to really be cautious and just keep monitoring, him and obviously not practicing.
I'll hand the Ouija board to Carmen. Thank you, Mike.
Doesn't necessarily, Mike, means you need to ask Ouija board type questions.
I was going to avoid the subject altogether, but now that I get drug into it, I have to pull it out. No, I'm not. When you go back to the Michigan State game, you guys are 3 of 24 from 3. I mean, did you go back and look at that game? Did you like what you were getting from the perimeter that just wasn't going in, or do you feel like you forced too many that night?
Yeah, we had some early that weren't shots that you would take. I'd say 2 or 3 shots in there, but yeah, I thought they were okay shots. They weren't that bad. But yeah, we had some that we had some early. I thought we settled in. I thought the ones we got in the second half were really good shots. Even though we didn't make a lot of them, I thought they were really good shots.
Just, I mean, that game seemed to, why did that game propel you into the spot you're in now as far as where you sit in the Big Ten standings? I mean, you went on a winning streak after that. You've put together some, a good stretch here. What about that game kind of pushed you guys in the right direction?
I think being able to grind out a win on the road. Obviously, we had a couple losses to Iowa, to Illinois. Then we had the Rutgers game where they had some guys out, and they had a couple guys have career nights against us. And Rutgers game was a game that, we could have won. And we just weren't good enough, in my opinion, defensively to win that game. We should have, tried to grind it out. Now, obviously, this is coming from my perspective. They felt they did grind it out. So give them credit. They made more plays than we did. And we just, we let one get away where we felt like, we should have had a better chance to win in that game. And so I just think when you played as poorly as we did in the first half, with all respect to Michigan State and their defense, you're just trying to get on solid footing and have some positive plays. Whether you can get back into the game at that point, their record's probably pretty good when they're up 16.5 or whatever they were up at half. And so, we were able to, really, really show some toughness and hang in there and make enough plays and get enough stops. And obviously it got to a really low-scoring game. And, our defense was much better in the second half. Our offense was much better in the second half. And then obviously Travion made that shot, and we got him to miss at the end. And, that builds confidence. And now when you get into close games and, you get to the Ohio State game and you're able to get that win and make some plays there, that helps you. Now, with that being said, we've been in 2 back-to-back road games where it's been a possession game, and we haven't been able to get a rebound, or we haven't been able to get a stop, or execute down the stretch like we would. And so you can look at it a lot of different ways. You build confidence from those, and then you learn from the ones that you struggle with, and hopefully you're better because of all of it.
So how do you view this Michigan State team, and how much do you look at Saturdays, what happened Saturday to them as who they are and who they're going to be come Tuesday? Yeah,
I just watched the Iowa-Michigan State game at Iowa, and offensively they played great. They did some really good things. They made shots. Aaron Henry was making threes, making plays, but just they were able to score in that game. And obviously this game, and if you go back and watch, there's a lot of stats that kind of don't add up. And obviously Iowa's making a bunch of shots, and Michigan State had some open shots. They just didn't make. And then anytime, you do that as a coach and everybody starts to kind of struggle with their shooting, you're trying to, just find lineups. You're just trying to find somebody, that can knock some shots down, make some plays, and then build off of it and stick with them. Sometimes that gets to be difficult. And I think that was just one of those games I look at as kind of an outlier game for them in terms of they had some pretty good shooters have open shots that just didn't go down. And with that, when that happens, that snowballs in the wrong direction, especially against a good team like Iowa. And that's just what happened. And so I don't look at, I look at the team that played at Iowa versus the team that played at Michigan State versus Iowa. I think we're going to see that team. And that's what you have to do in coaching. You don't prepare for somebody's worst day. You prepare for somebody's best day. And obviously, we know that they're going to come in here and compete and play. And, those guys got a lot of pride. And, we're going to have to be prepared and be ready to go.
I know I ask this a lot, but from what you're hearing from the Big Ten, they still on schedule to get that Nebraska game at your place on the books?
That's the way we're taking it. It's going to be a tight window. But yeah, hopefully, we can get a date here pretty soon, considering we got 6 games left, and that's one of our 6.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for Matt?
I've got a couple of questions for Matt.
Go ahead, Tom.
Matt, in regards to the freshman development and such, obviously when they struggle with certain things, you try to learn and teach from that. But especially in Jaden's case, where he's had success with doing certain things and wants to continue that, is that still all part of a learning process as well too? As to, even though it worked one night, of what may or may not work the next?
Yeah, no question. That's a big one. When you're young, it's kind of a byproduct of youth. You think you play well, it's going to carry over to the next game, and that's just not the way it works. It's kind of like shooting. Like just because you hit 6 threes in one game, the next game doesn't mean you're automatically hot. So like each game's kind of a process of being able to play, and sometimes they force things. Not sometimes, they do force things, and they just don't trust the process. And that's what you have to be able to do. And it really comes down just to the understanding of taking what the defense gives you, executing what we're trying to do, and then realize you don't have to do it all yourself. I think talented guys have that burden sometimes on them, like they got to do it. They always got to do it. And they're on the hunt. That's a good thing that they're being aggressive, but they also have to understand, what the defense has given them and just make the simple play. And when they do that and they play off their instincts, they normally have a lot more success.
And with Ethan, obviously what he went through earlier in the year kind of slowed down his progress and such. But what sort of conversations do you have with him as this goes on, as in regards to him continuing to keep his head up and working hard and getting better?
Yeah, he's he got obviously the short end of things for having to go through the mono. Like that wasn't. There's a lot of Sasha, what he had to go through with COVID isn't fair. Like what he had to go through with mono is not fair, but it's part of dealing with it and going through it. And then for him, he got to play a lot right away because we had 2 guys that were out and he had no practice time. And so that piece of it was like as a coach, you're just appreciative of the fact that he, did everything he could to help us at that time, but just hasn't gotten enough minutes to really get going. And that's what you want. Like you want to be able to play more, to feel more comfortable, out there. But he's a worker. He puts in a lot of time, watches extra film, and he's always ready to go when his number's called.
The things that we can't see, like practice and such, are you getting everything out of him that you want in practice? Okay, good.
Sure. Yeah, he's done some good things. Like he's getting better. He's working at things. So it happens with depth. It happens, but it also happens with your start too. Like getting off to a good start. Being able to, that it's hard when you get into numbers. We have 6 guards, and it gets a little difficult.
Yeah. And lastly, you had mentioned earlier, like with Eric, when he came back, how it takes time. But are you seeing that already too with Sasha, that this just might take a little time for him to be back 100% where he wants to be?
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit different. Like the first game he plays 14 minutes, the next game he plays 20 minutes. So like it's, just talking to different people, talking to your training staff, talking to the medical staff, he's going to tell you he's 100%, and hopefully he is. Like that's just the way it is as a competitor. Like he's going to say like, hey, because he wants to play and he wants to play more, and rightfully so. And so, but I think as you go and you can help those guys get into it and not have the burden of playing 30 minutes right away, play 14, play 20, and keep growing that. And I think it really helps with guys. I think the guys that get put in there right away and they have to play 30, 35 minutes, that's a little bit of a strain, being out. But you have to do what you have to do if that's the situation you're in. So, no, he's done a good job for us. We got to help him and get him going and get him some looks too. Like, sometimes when you're used to taking more shots or used to playing more, you start to get antsy, you start to itch a little bit, and you just got to still let things come to you and allow things to be fluid. So when you get them, now you get into rhythm and you take them. But on other things, like, he's done a good job while being out on the court. Like he knows what's going on defensively, he knows what's going on. But the key for us is to be really good here in a couple weeks. That's the key, man. Like you got to keep some things in perspective of what's all going on, around you and with your team. But that's the key. Like you got to keep winning games. I got that. I got how each game's important. But here in about 3 weeks, man, like you really, it's such an important time that, we all stay on the same page and we all feel good about it.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Actually, I had one more real quick, if you don't mind. I forgot to ask you after the Minnesota game. I'm just personally curious. Can you explain what you were going for on the baseball pass there at the end?
Yeah, we were trying to loop those guys, and a lot of times they run with them, and then putting 2 guys in there, and then like just having Travion just pin that guy. You know how you get concerned at that point about people fouling right away.
Right. That's what I wondered about.
Yeah, that long dribble. You get it, even though, there have been no problem for us to hit Jaden right there and then try, because sometimes those guys that are athletic and fast like that, they can dribble and get away from people. And now they go to foul. And, we've seen that on the flip end, a couple years ago when we tried to foul one time and we hit the guy, but it wasn't enough. They didn't give it to us. And they just missed the three against Northwestern about 4 years ago. And so like getting him on the run is not the worst thing in the world, but a lot of people are going to foul there.
Right.
So trying to get one of those big guys and then loop those guys and then bring them back into play. So, we were kind of mixed up there, especially even on that out of bounds play after that, trying to get, as you run that, trying to get the right guys together to make a pass, to make a shot. But if you get stuck a little bit, now you got to have the ball in somebody's hands, that can go make that play right there. And so what we were hoping our execution was good enough to give Sasha just that catch and shoot right there, but it wasn't.
Right.
We didn't do that. And that was on me. More than anything. But it is when you get into those plays, a lot of people will magnify those plays like they are high-risk plays, but you're in a high-risk situation. And so, like, trying to get that to maybe surprise them, and Travion gets that catch and then flip it back to one of those guards on the run. Now people are staring at the ball and they're looking, and now he catches that. Do they have the wherewithal to foul him right there?
Right.
And that's still at 5 seconds. I think it was 6 seconds when we were throwing it. And now we get that pitch back. But I got to do a better job, trying to get something there for our guys.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Just one real quick from me. Can you just you kind of touched upon it a little earlier, but where is Michigan State at now as opposed to where they were at when you played them the first time around? Where have they improved? What have you seen on tape from them?
Yeah. Well, obviously they've had to, sit out. That's a real tough deal, for them. Even though they've had some games under their belt, it's still a process to be able to come back. And obviously you see the improvements that they made from game 1 to game 2 to game 3. You can see it in their scoring. Being able to go into Iowa a couple games ago and score the way they did is pretty impressive. Now, obviously they had a tough game this last game against Iowa. But no, they have good interchangeable pieces. They have a lot of size on their front line. They are very physical. Their guards, obviously Langford and Henry are two very talented guys. I would say with trying to maybe give a little bit more of a responsibility to Henry, to Langford, even Hauser at times, just when I think you have those guys are trying to get them into some ISOs, and they're hard to guard. And they're good in transition. They're good in space. They run some actions that put you in a bind. You have to know what's coming to try to make it hard on them, because if you don't, then they're going to get in their sweet spots and knock down those shots or drive or get to the free throw line. So I think it's kind of an evolution for them. Like they got put into a really, really tough spot, and now they're growing. I kind of look at their last 5 or 6 games like their first 5 or 6 games. Like, it's like it's 2 different seasons almost. And it's obviously very different than you're used to, but I think you're seeing it all across the country. They're starting in a sense. They're starting over, and now you see it in some of those games where they can grind out a victory, against a Penn State, and that's Michigan State basketball: toughness, guarding, rebounding, finding a way to, when things aren't going your way, to get a win. And so obviously they won the game against Nebraska also. So they've had a couple wins here, and they're just, and obviously they had a setback other night, but, a lot of the same type of things. But like I said, I think you got to take a step back and keep the perspective what they had to go through.